Yes, it was a difficult decision. It's still a painful status in which I find myself, but I've always tried to be a realist and a pragmatist, and there was nothing else I could do.
There has been some criticism that the company was not as well run as it might have been, that in fact you and Mr. Barnes were insatiable gamblers, as someone put it. As soon as you had one deal, you were on to the next.
I think that's true. I think there's, that criticism is valid. I don't think we consolidated our position as well as we should. We were moving too quickly, but this is probably the worst economic period, certainly in my lifetime in this state, and I think it's probably as bad, if not worse, than the Depression of the 1930s.
Now, on the personal level, declaring Chapter 11, what does that mean? Will you have to sell everything you own, or how much money will you have left?
No, I'll have to sell all of my assets, and that includes community assets, furniture, fixtures, china, silver, crystal, rugs, paintings, everything except what Nellie has as her personal property. So basically, we keep our ranch home under the law. We keep 200 acres. We keep $30,000 worth of goods. That's all. We will lose everything what we've accumulated over a lifetime.
It must be very painful to see these things go.
It is painful, and it's frustrating, and it's irritating, and it's galling. We both came from very modest, what today would be called poor surroundings. And I guess like any poor boy, when you get a few dollars, you want to buy something. You want to buy something, you want to have things, you want to keep things, you want to look at things.
Are you afraid at all about the future?
No, not the least. Not the least. I have no fear whatever. I suppose that's one of the reasons I'm in trouble. I've always been an optimist. I've always been very confident in my ability to survive and to overcome obstacles. I've never been afraid of work.
You and Mrs. Connally have had an exceptionally close marriage, it appears. And I think it must have been very difficult for you, the man whom she so obviously admires. I'm
not sure she still does, but or should. I'm not sure. I think she does, but I doubt that she should.
But it must have been extremely difficult to have to break this news to her, or to let her know that in fact it was a fait accompli.
She lived through it with me for many, many months. It came as no surprise to her. As a matter of fact, I think it came as a relief to her as it did to me.
What has kept this marriage seemingly so solid over all these years? It's really been a bedrock for you, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Well, she's been a wonderful, understanding companion and mate and friend and wife and lover and, you know, everything you could ask of a human being. And she's been supportive. She's been tolerant. We have always done things that I'm sure that pleased her. I think she would have been happier if I'd never gotten involved in politics at all.
And you have 3 children living, and you had one child who died.
Yes, we lost a daughter. And
what happened there?
She was killed in Florida. This was in 1959.
1959. Do you mind if I ask how she was killed?
By a gunshot.
How did that happen?
I don't really know. I never have fully known. I think the coroner's verdict was that it was self-inflicted.
That must have been very painful for you.
Oh, yeah, it's by far the worst thing we've ever suffered.
And how old was she at that time?
I guess she was 17.
You've had very interesting and very strong brushes with destiny in your life, haven't you? How do you feel about that? Most people don't have that in their lives.
Well, I think it gives you the strength of perspective, and it gives you a realization of values. This is why I think both of us can, with considerable equanimity, bear this this bankruptcy. Because in the final analysis, we're giving up things. But there are a lot of things in this world. You can always reacquire things. You can't reacquire family, friends. You can't necessarily reacquire health. We have health, we have friends. That's where our riches are, and that's what's important to us, really.
Seems his biggest mistake was personally signing for the law.
We were very close. He trusted me, I think, implicitly. When he left for the South Pacific in 1942, he signed 2 documents. One to run him for re-election as a congressman, the other to file him for election to the United States Senate. And he left both of those documents with me and told me to talk to his friends, make up my mind, and file him for whichever position I thought he should run for, which I thought was a fairly vivid example of a man's trust.
And you ran him for Congress?
I ran him for re-election to Congress.
What was your reaction when Lyndon Johnson told you that he might accept the vice presidency from John Kennedy?
I knew he was going to be offered the job. I was shaving in the room next to him in the hotel in Los Angeles. He called me and said, "Get in here right quick, get in here immediately." So I quit shaving, went on in there, and he said, "John Kennedy just called. He's coming down to see me." I said, "What do you think he wants?" And I said, "He's going to offer you the vice presidency." He said, "Oh, no, he's not. Oh, no." I said, "Yes, he is." And so we talked a few moments. I went back, finished shaving. John Kennedy came in and left. Mr. Johnson called me back in after John Kennedy left and said, "You were right. He offered me the vice presidency." And then all hell broke loose.
Did you think it was a good idea?
Yes, I did. I thought he had no choice. I analyzed it from the standpoint, suppose he went on the ticket with Kennedy and Kennedy won. Suppose he went on the ticket and Kennedy lost. Suppose he didn't go on the ticket and Kennedy won. Suppose he didn't go on the ticket and Kennedy lost. So there were 4 possible scenarios. In every single one of those 4 scenarios, it made sense for Johnson to go on the ticket. Mm-hmm. Notwithstanding, it was a very unpopular move among the Texas delegation. And all this time this was going on, Bobby Kennedy was calling, coming down, and said, "Well, you can't take this. You just can't take this." We said, "Look, your brother asked him. If your brother doesn't want him, he ought to call down here and tell him he made a mistake and withdraw the offer. Johnson's not going to refuse to take it because you think and you say that there's going to be a revolt in the convention." Well, again, to make a long story short, Bobby left. He came back twice more. Then Rayburn wouldn't even see him. I went in and talked to him. And I finally convinced Speaker Rayburn and Senator Kerr, really, that Johnson had no choice.
On November 22nd, 1963, Governor Connally and his wife Nellie were riding with President and Mrs. John Kennedy in that fateful motorcade through Dallas. Nellie Connally had just said to President Kennedy, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you," when suddenly 3 shots rang out. Did you hear the first gunshot?
Yes.
What did you think it was?
Gunshot.
Oh, you did?
I thought it was a rifle shot.
What did you do? Did you look around?
I turned, yes, I was seated on the jump seat immediately in front of the president, so the sound came from back over my right shoulder. And so I turned to see if I could see the president out of the corner of my eye, and I didn't. So I turned to look over my left shoulder to see, because I felt it was a gunshot, a rifle shot. And at the time I was about back even, facing forward, I was hit. And it's almost as if someone hit you in the back, middle of the back, with a closed fist. And it knocked me over, and I was conscious, of course, and then I saw I was covered with blood. And
you said?
I said, "My God, they're going to kill us all." And then Nellie pulled me down in her lap. I was facing forward, and she bent her head down over mine, And then
And probably saved your life.
could well have, probably did. About that time, we heard another sound that was about that loud. And immediately, it's not a pleasant thing to discuss, but immediately we saw on the blue velour covering of the car blood and brain tissue. So I knew that the third shot had been a fatal shot.
Do you believe the Warren Commission report that one person was responsible for the entire assassination?
I believe it because there's been no evidence, no creditable evidence ever produced that would indicate that there was anyone except Lee Harvey Oswald.